Hi, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk About Thrivers. My name is Stacy Pendarvis. I am the Vice President of Programs at the Monique Burr Foundation for Children. As many of you know, our mission is to provide the best comprehensive evidence-based prevention program for children and teens. We have reached over 5 million students with our programs in the past 10 years. And MBF programs cover bullying, cyberbullying, all types of abuse, digital safety, exploitation, trafficking, and more. So on behalf of the entire MBF team, I would like to welcome you to our webinar today with Dr. Michele Borba. Few quick housekeeping issues. Everyone is muted, and we'll do that throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, Beth on our team is monitoring the Q&A box. You can submit your questions throughout the webinar, and as time permits, Dr. Borba will answer as many of those as she can at the end. Julie is monitoring the chat. So if you have any, technical issues, or you want to say hi, tell everybody where you're from, you're welcome to use the chat box for that. And then just want to let everybody know that you will receive a follow-up email after the webinar with a certificate of completion and some resources that Dr. Borba has shared. No, we will not be sharing her slides today, but we will have the recorded webinar and some, like an educator guide and a parent guide that she's going to share with us. So, many of you attended our Let's Talk About Prevention series that we did last summer. So we're continuing that theme today with Let's Talk About Thrivers. As you know, or may know, Dr. Michele Borba is a wonderful friend and supporter of MBF. We love her, and we're so excited to have her back with us today. You're in for a treat if you've never heard her speak. But in the interest of allowing her more time, I'm going to really abbreviate her bio and just tell you a little bit about her. She's an internationally recognized expert and author on children, teens, parenting, bullying, and moral development. Her work aims to strengthen children's character and resilience, build strong families, create compassionate and just school cultures, and reduce peer cruelty. She received a doctorate in educational psychology and counseling from the University of San Francisco, an MA in learning disabilities, and a BA from the University of Santa Clara, and a life teaching credential from San Jose State University. She is a former classroom teacher who has worked in regular education as well as with children with learning, physical, behavioral, and emotional disabilities, and in private practice for troubled youth. Her practical research-based advice and her amazing stories are culled from a career of working with over 1 million parents and educators worldwide. She is also a motivational speaker around the world and a highly respected media contributor and the go-to expert on parenting, bullying prevention, education, and a variety of children and teen issues. She is an NBC contributor, appearing over 100 times on the Today Show, and is the regular parenting expert on many other shows, such as Dr. Phil, Dr. Drew's Life-Changing, Dr. Drew's Life Changers, sorry. And she is also the award-winning author of 23 parenting and educational books, including Unselfie, and which is one of my favorites, and her newest book, Thrivers, which is why we're here today. So with that, I will say thank you to Dr. Borba for being here. I will share her video. We will start her video, and she can take over screen sharing and get started with you today. All right, you're still muted, Michele.
I am talking
there you go.
And I am so glad to be here. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart and soul, and I'm absolutely delighted to know that so many of you are from all over the world. Yesterday, I was talking to the Philippines, next week's Hong Kong, then Ireland. We're all concerned about our kids. So what I'd like to do is share with you simple, practical, but science-backed ways that we can help our kids thrive, if not just in a pandemic and an unprecedented time, then for the rest of their lives. The bottom line, folks, is I think we need to reset our parenting and our education. We need to rethink what our kids are going to really need, because it is an uncertain world. They're going to continue to find uncertainty and adversity. And so let's begin to look at what will help kids thrive. Most importantly, let's begin to look at some possibilities. The research came from Dr. Amy Warner. This book actually changed my life because she asked the same question that I know every one of you is haunted with. Are some of our kids going to make it? Who does? Who doesn't? She began to look at a cohort of children who are growing up in extraordinarily adverse situations, poverty, abuse. And she studied them not just for 1 year, but actually for 40. And she found something that all of us are going to be comforted for. And that is very many of them made it. They bounced back even in their teen years. 1/3 of them were competent, confident, and caring. And now Amy Warner says, why? Why do some kids make it more than others? And she discovered the most important thing that we all need to hang on to. It's not DNA and it's not one program. What I want to do is share with you what I discovered when I was writing the book Thrivers that do make a difference on our children's lives. And the most important thing we discover is that it's 7 strengths. Now, I came up with these strengths because I had a very strong criterion. First, I wanted to look at what resilience says does matter. And it wasn't just Amy Warner. It was Norm Garmese, Michael Rutter from BC. We're looking at also Ann Maston from University of Minnesota, some amazing researchers who've been studying kids for a very long haul, from war zone areas, from poverty, from abuse. And then what I looked at is which of the traits that these kids have are teachable, and not only are going to help them in resilience, but also reduce their mental health problems. I mean, prior to this pandemic in just in the US, we were looking at 1 in 5 American kids were going to be suffering from some kind of a mental health disorder. I know it's similar across the world. But finally, what I wanted to do was look at not only resilience and mental health, but also what's going to help our kids in the real 21st century and become peak performers. There are 7 traits. Here's what I suggest you do. Take out a piece of paper, because let's be practical from this moment on. Fold it into 4s and number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 per block. The last one is going to be your one thing. What I want to do in the next hour is go through each of these 7 as to what we can actually do in our classrooms, in our schools, and if you're parents, what you can do at home. I promise none of these things is going to take any money. It doesn't cost any dimes, and it's not one more program. Instead, it's using practical research strategies that will help our kids. It starts with confidence. It's the foundation that we do know that thrivers are a kid who thinks more about who they are and can focus on their strengths because they have strong self-understanding. Empathy comes up very strongly, says Warner, in every piece of research on resilience, because social connection is what helps our kids keep that mental health to a point so that it's more open, they're stressed down. That becomes a problem because of physical distancing. Let's work that through. Self-control. I think across the world right now, there isn't a teacher that doesn't admit that our kids need stress management techniques. If they don't have copers, they can't think straight and self-regulate. That's number 3. 4 is integrity. Oh, thank heavens for that one. Integrity means a kid is going to be able to say, I know what I stand for. I have a strong moral compass. And so as a result of it, when push comes to shove and the adversity comes, I don't have to whiver and waver. I can just go for it. Curiosity, can you imagine? But it seems that it's highly correlated because a thriver, a kid who says, I got this, is a kid who really knows I can get around the problem. I am a problem solver. I have an openness to life and people, and that also is teachable. Perseverance, that's the one we all want now. Our kids are kind of hitting the COVID wall in terms of motivation because some of these other preceding strengths are low. When your stress is low, if you don't have the confidence or you don't have the empathy, it's tough to keep on going. But we're going to look at what helps our kids endure until finally, every one of us included, needs hope and optimism. You put them all together, and we now know it's the best hope to helping our kids be one of those guys that says, I got this. There's one other thing you need to know is that each one of these traits is really based on agency. It's the child who has the control. They're not driven by the parent. It's a slow process along the way till the child begins to realize, I do have this. I can endure. And so let's look at what we can do. And the first thing is recognize that whenever your doors open, or if they're already open, we need to prepare ourselves for what's coming down. In the United States, we have already been warned that the next wave of the pandemic is going to be a youth mental health crisis. And from every time I'm talking to anybody else in the world, you agree. The first thing is be ready for it. Do you have your mental health professionals in place? Do you have simple trainings? I'm talking 5-minute trainings to your teachers so they know what depression signs look like. One of the coolest things I've ever seen was Baltimore schools who actually just came up with a bookmark of here are signs of depression and gave it to every teacher so that you can just spot those signs and be aware of them. Those are keys that you need to do. Now let's look at what does it look like? And it begins by realizing that it's got some ideas along the way. The first idea is that you all are saying, which kid should we be more concerned about? And we do know from trauma that there are 3 children that you should put on your Google Doc, 3 kinds of kids. Your Google Doc may be quite long. But the first P is that if a child has had a prior existing issue, he already was stressed prior to the pandemic, she already was suffering from anxiety prior to the pandemic, put their name on a Google Doc. Why I'm saying a Google Doc is that I think it's an extraordinary great resource that you can actually share amongst a staff. It's just between you, it's private. But maybe what we need to do is get a list of not just who the counselor knows they're concerned about, but kids that you all see that you're concerned about. The second thing you may want to know is not just a prior existing problem, is Emmy Werner would say, does this kid have a protective factor? Do they have coping strategies? If they have pre-existing coping strategies, or you're teaching coping strategies to these kids right now, they're more likely to endure the adversity. What we're finding is many kids didn't have them. They relied on their GPAs or their test scores, and now adversity struck, or they relied on their parents and they're not doing quite well in life. The third thing is, do you know which kids have faced real trauma in their lives or real grief in their life? Trauma and grief are different, but did they watch grandma pass away? Has dad's job has gone through? Did the business collapse? Are there stress problems already going on in the home? You put those 3 together, any of those, a prior existing issue, you know that the child doesn't have protective factors or proximity to a crisis. Those are children to be aware of. The next thing is, who are your online defense people that those kids can go to? Many of the kids I interviewed prior to this pandemic said their most important resource was that counselor, that school counselor. So here's a couple of things you may want to do that are, again, simple and no cost. If your doors are open, then make sure that each counselor or people who are your go-tos, it could be other people besides the counselor. If you're running out of counselors, and most schools are, can you get retired teachers to come in just for a month? Those caring people that are there for kids, and say, that person is just going to be in that particular room as a go-to person. Make sure you post the signs and times when that counselor is available or when your go-to people are available. Kids say that, particularly teens, the biggest problem is they try to get to the counselor because they need to be able to have that person. Thrivers have go-to people and they can't find the person. So post the times, post the where I am, the go-tos, and post them also. Text, have a chain that you can do if your kids are on distance learning. The most critical thing that we learned from school shootings, now we've got pandemics and we've got suicidal behaviors of our children. I call it a red emergency card. It's nothing more than a red card in a plastic sleeve, and it's got index cards inside. It's simply in life. What you do, kids say the moment they really need to get to you, the principal, the secretary that they say is the godsend, they can't get to the person because there's maybe a lineup. You always have a red card right there hanging outside the door. You immediately take the card, pencils inside, slip by name, and slip it under the door. That means drop everything, stop, and go and help the child. Some kids say they only have a 5-minute passing period. They only have 5 minutes to get to you. Let's make ourselves available for kids. Other things, let's look at the first trait. Let's keep going, because we realize that the real point that helps our children become a thriver is knowing what they're good at, knowing what their strengths are. That's that self-awareness. Unfortunately, as parents, we do know that we spend more time trying to fix the kid. As schools, we're always in the Band-Aid mentality. I know we're not talking about your school, we're talking about the next one nearby. But confidence is a child who says, I may be not so good in that or that or that, but I have this to rely on. So how do we help our children figure out who they are? Bill Damon, one of I think our best adolescent psychologists, said confidence helps you thrive because it gives meaning to your life. It gives you have a sense of purpose over your life. And there's lots of things, trait number 1, that we can start writing down. Again, if you have questions, please write them in the chat room. I'll talk to you later about them, but let's look right now of just an overview of the 7 most critical traits and simple things we can do to make a difference on our children's lives. First, take a moment and figure out who each of your children are. Who are they? What are their strengths? This is not going to take one day. It's going to take the entire school year. But a couple of things that I absolutely love are what one teacher that started this whole process was a biology teacher. He said, I know my kids when they walk into this room based on their cume folder on what their grades are, but I don't know who they are as kids. I don't know what their learning styles are. I don't know what their passions are. I don't know maybe some things that are happening to them. So he takes roll on a pass it on card. He calls it a pass it on card because eventually when it takes him all year to figure out their styles, he just keeps writing them down. Is Stan here? Hey, Stan, good to see you. If he overhears something about the kid, if he finds out the kid has a particular interest, he loves guitar, or maybe he's discovered that his dad has just been deployed, or maybe he discovers on the back some other things that grandma is passing away, just passed away from COVID. He writes them down. What Murray Elementary did, Salt Lake City, is they made pass it on packs for each one. They knew they had some kids who were struggling, but here is now an elementary teacher's version. It's each child in the classroom. But by the end of the year, what they do is they remove the ring and pass it on to next year's teacher. How about kids that are really struggling right now? I think the greatest thing that we could all do to just help us begin to figure out this kid and build their confidence is ask just an email to each parent. Ask them simply, is there one thing that we should know about your child? One thing that would help me to be able to reach your child? One thing that happened to them this year that I am not aware of that would help me? Oh my gosh, that opens up the heart to a parent, but it helps you. Many teachers are doing the same thing to kids. What's one thing I need to know about you? Just simple ideas to help us know who our children are. Here's another one. We did this prior to the pandemic, but we can also do this on a Google wall. And it's just nothing more than this is every single child in the entire school. Okay, the secretary put it up and it's from A to Z. It's called an assessment wall. But what the teachers at this school site realized, and they alphabetized all the kids' names, is they sure knew the test scores. They sure knew who the troublemakers were, but they didn't know things that were personal things about the kids. So the principal asked them to do one simple little thing. It may take a while. And again, you may not be able to access your staff wall now, but you can do it on a Google Doc. All you need to do to make this simple is just start checking names. If you know something personal about the child, like anything personal that's a positive thing, put a check mark name next to them. If you have some kind of a positive relationship, put a check mark. Now go back and look and see who doesn't have any check marks next to the child. Name, those are the kids who are struggling. Those are the kids we need to reach a little more. Because you see, all of the work on resilience says 2 things about these kids. Yeah, they have confidence and they have those 7 things, those 7 wonderful character strengths that are teachable. But the other thing they have going for them is a relationship with at least one caring person. Emmy Werner, Ann Maston, every piece of work on resilience says that's a strong commonality. They may have protective skills or buffers or coping strategies, but the other thing they always have is a champion. Yeah, it might be the parent who says, I refuse to give up on you. But the second most highly correlated person who comes up on over and over again when we interview kids is you, the teacher. It means who are the kids that we're overlooking? What some schools do is then they say, okay, here's the 100 kids who don't have a check mark after their names based on the 1,200 in our classrooms or in our school. Let's start forming relationships with them. One of the most amazing dropout prevention programs that we need to resurrect right now was called Adopt a Student. Every teacher looked at the kids who didn't have a check mark going and said, I'll adopt them. It doesn't mean you're going to physically bring them home, but they said the moment I see them on a Zoom call, or the moment I see them anywhere in a hall, or the moment I see those 1, 2, or maybe 3 kids, I'm going to just say, hi, how are you? Another principal does something called this is Calgary, a Calgary principal, Canada, hello. But I love what this principal did. He said, I'm bringing in a photograph every month. I said, there's certain children who are enduring such trauma. I can't tell the teachers all the stuff that these kids are happening in their lives, but I want them to thrive. So I just bring in a photograph and say, here's my kid I've adopted. If you see this child, would you just give him a little tender, loving care or say, hi, how are you? What happens is textbook classic. The Adopt the Student program is now in the United States of America recognized as one of the best dropout prevention programs. A school in Sacramento, California did it. They were ready to have thousands of kids drop out. But out of the 125 that they as a staff adopted, 123 of them remained. When they asked the kids, why are you here? Every one of them said, because now somebody cares. Same with this. It's simply in life. When I asked the principal, how's it going? He said, it's amazing. What's now happening is other teachers are now saying, here's my kid, look out for them. The first thing we need to do is shrink the village, figure out who the kids are that really need our love and attention, because thrivers always have those personal contacts. The second thing we know is look at the research. When I was writing Thrivers again, I started looking at the science and said, who are the kids who really are our most talented children? To figure out how were they raised. I mean, I'm not saying let's all raise Nobel Peace Prize winners or Olympic athletes, but is there something that happens that helps our kids develop that strength to really stretch them in our schools and give them those opportunities? And they discovered something. They discovered that the most immensely talented kids from a very early age had a parent or a teacher who identified the strength. They identified it, and then the first teachers, the first tutors, the first beginning teams of us as parents, we just help the child learn to love the talent by making it fun. It was child driven. It was opportunities to just expose the kids to the talent. Unfortunately, talented kids, we discover our most immensely talented kids give up their talent by the age of 13 because they said they don't have enough time to do it. Flow. When are we most happy? When are we in most joy? University of Chicago says we're engaged in our talent. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to stop helping the kid who's struggling in math because that's not their talent. But maybe it's finding after school clubs for our kids, or recognizing maybe there's a genius hour that we can do where each child, many schools are doing this once a week or once a month. What's the one thing you wish you could learn a little more about it? You take on that. Look real carefully, because I discovered that the acronym TALENT, when I designed it, was what we know about kids who really have a strong sense. They have a stronger tenaciousness about it. They focus a little longer on that particular element. They learn easier in it. They're more eager. They have a need for the talent. When the club stopped and they couldn't do soccer and they loved it, there went the depression. Their tone is more energized about it. What you can also do is, once you know the strength, another idea. Again, I don't mean to flood you with stuff, but I'm doing it on purpose, because my goal is for you in this hour to see lots of things you can do. And then I hope that you'll choose one, no more than 2 things, to go back to your staff and say, let's try this. Now you've got another struggling kid. You have a child who's not thriving. What do? You do a one-on-one conference, just a minute a day, maybe a minute before you start the Zoom, or a text to the child. And it isn't just one time, maybe it's at least 10 days, or new behaviors take a minimum of 21 days. And it's nothing more than, I'm thinking about you. How are you doing? Or I noticed that you really seem to enjoy that art class. Keep going, teachers, keep going, because the more we help our kids know what they're good at, or at least the more we help our kids know, I'm not giving up on you, the more they're likely to build that internal strength, which is what it's all about. Here's another one. Shannon was really struggling in a classroom. The teacher says, I don't know how to get through to her. She's always a behavior problem. She never can focus. I said, it's because she doesn't have a strong sense of her who. So find one thing she legitimately is good at. The teacher said, well, she does have a really good smile. She doesn't do it a whole bunch, but if I'd help her smile, maybe that could help her just relate with others. That's exactly what you need to do. So every day, quietly, not in front of the whole class, but quietly, the teacher would just say, you have a great smile. First day, she said she absolutely balked. She hit her face and she just torqued and said, I'm terrible at it. And I said, it's because she needs to be reframed and you need to not stop. Kids who are really struggling assume you're going to give up. So start tracking her reaction. Start tracking how long it takes. I say this to you because of all the strategies I offer to teachers. This is the one I get the most emails back from saying, you won't believe the difference it made on this kid's life. Because by around the 20th day, I began to see that she legitimately started to smile and say, thank you. Take one kid, not every one of your thousands that you're dealing with. Is there one simple little thing that you can find and you can keep reframing it over and over again? The first thing is helping our children develop a sense of who. Thrivers have a strong sense of awareness and have that inner confidence. There are simple little things that we can do. The next thing we need to do along the way when we help our kids walk in and get ready for them after enduring a year of real intense insecurity is mobilize your people. When I asked one child who was really suffering from depression, I said, you really look like you're having a tough time. Is there one thing that I could tell your staff? One thing I could pass on to the rest of your teachers? One thing that would help you just maybe be more able to go back into school? And she said, no, I don't think so. I said, well, just think there's got to be one little idea. And all of a sudden you could see the light bulb come on. She said, well, there is one TV show my mom always watches. I hate the show, but it takes place in Boston in a bar. There's this guy named Norm, Sam, and Rebecca. I said, well, what do you like about the show? She says, I hate the show. It's the song. I said, what's about the song? She said, oh my gosh, the song's called Cheers. I get there every Thursday when my mom watches it on reruns just to hear the song, and then I go hide in my room because it sings what every kid needs, a place where everybody knows your name and everybody's glad you came. That's exactly what Emmy Werner, exactly what all of the work on resilience says our children are craving right now. Just one-to-one connection, empathy. It's lying dormant with our kids because empathy thrives in a caring culture. That's your school site, but it also thrives with face-to-face connection. Okay, they've been social distance. Okay, they've been watching and playing video games all day long, but we can still boost emotional literacy. We can still be creative, and we can still take back what we know is one of the most crucial elements of mental health. What we now know is that empathy is the seeds for real strong mental health. In fact, are you feeling a little burnout? Okay, let me give you a hint. As stress builds, which we're all feeling it, and empathy dies because we don't have the connection with the people, the outcome is burnout. That's happening to our kids. It's happening to us. Notice that as I give each one of the slides for each of the 7 traits, and this would be trait number 2 to write down, empathy, is that it also has 3 skills that are teachable. So many of these are your SEL programs, but let's look at some little simple ways to weave it in. It starts with people connection. It starts with one-on-one. It starts with emotional literacy. Here's some ideas to think about it. I start with my own teacher. That's my teacher, Mrs. Fredrickson. I was raised in Northern California, but when I think of empathy and I think of a thriving person who is a protective champion, it would be my Mrs. Fredrickson, my first grade teacher. Now, I know you're not looking for her, you're looking for me. I'm the middle row, third from the over on the side over here with the bangs and the pigtails, but here's what I remember about her. I remember every single day she stood at the door, and every single day for the entire year, she greeted each one of us. I always thought I was teacher's pet. Took me a while to figure out she was doing it to every other kid with a H or an H. That was her ritual. It was just a high five or a hug or a handshake, something that started with an H. After a while, she also would praise us. Her praise was real simple. She'd always praise us for the inside, never cute pigtails, Michele, but thank you for being so kind yesterday. She'd praise us from the inside out. I always knew where I'd find her. She was at the door. Her discipline was also very moral in that classroom. She created this caring, empathic kind of a culture. Anybody did something wrong in the classroom, she also asked the H&H question, was that helpful or hurtful? I'm telling you, within 2 weeks, anytime somebody did something wrong, they'd turn to the other kid and go, was that helpful or hurtful? Mrs. Fredrickson was a gold mine. The most amazing thing happened to me 20 years after I left this room. 9 of these kids showed up to a reunion, and every one of them got us on a stage. We got an alumni picture taking session, and every one of us remembered H&H. Remember Mrs. Fredrickson? She'd always start with the H&H. Remember that helpful and hurtful? Rituals and routines. I think one of the things we do as teachers, because we love our children so desperately, is a lot of stuff. But years later, it's the simple little rituals that our kids remember most. Principal, they remember you standing at the front gate saying, hi, how are you, when kids come in. They remember you looking at them face to face. Those are the things. I took pictures of these when I visited schools across the country, and I love these. Can you imagine? This is Poway in San Diego. Can you imagine what they did is they bought a welcome mat just at Kmart, and at the beginning, outside every single class door, that's what they did to make the place look welcoming and open. Hi, come on in. We're glad you're here. This classroom, struggling children. These were in Washington, D.C. in a very violent zone. But I walked into the room and I almost cried because what the teacher had was a photograph of every kid, their family or their support system. Every kid said, this is my family away from home. What are you doing to create that kind of a spot for our kids? When you're in trauma, when you're in stress, you need to feel welcomed. That's why we're so many ideas. Let me give you Canada. Here you go. Josh Yates. I adore this child, but he's got the way that turns us all around. And I'm giving this youth story for 2 reasons. It's the best way to build empathy. Josh, he's 16, is doing it. But we also know something about many of our kids. Many of our children are in heightened stress, and now they're afraid to go back to school because they've spent a year not exercising their empathy muscles or their social skill muscles. And I want you to have some empathy for them. What every kid needs in order to have that feel a little bit less stressed and more open, because they're all concerned about, are they going to like me? Who am I going to sit next to? Or if I can sit next to them, is anybody going to want to say hello? The 3 most highly correlated traits of beginning stages of empathy are hello. You can wave if you can't see your smile. You can still wave because a smile is the second one. Eye contact, looking at the person, not down, looking. Encouraging, thumbs up, how you doing? High five, glad to see you. Wow, those are so easy, and you don't learn those on a worksheet. You learn them by seeing and doing. Josh, here he is. He lives way far north in Nova Scotia. He was bullied unmercifully as a kid. And now the second most horrible thing happened to him is that his dad, his most precious, significant other, passed away. Right before his dad passes away, he reminds Josh, don't forget who you are. Who? Your confidence level? You are kind. Don't ever stop being kind, Josh. That's who you are. Promise me. Well, the depression mounts. Mom decides that the only hope for her child is, let's move to a different school. Maybe the bullying will stop. It doesn't. He moves to a huge, huge high school. First day of school, the bullying already starts, but Josh now has a who I am and decides to do something. He said, I refuse to become invisible. What I'm going to do instead, real simple. I'm going to be the door opener. I said to him, what do you mean you're going to be the door opener? I'm just going to stand at the door every day and open it for everybody who walks in. I'm just going to say hello. How'd that work? Not so well at the beginning, because of course you can imagine what high school kids will do. But he said, I'm not giving in. I'm not giving in. Every day what this kid did was open the door. And pretty soon along the way, hello, hi, are you? Encourage, same thing. We've got to model and keep encouraging our kids to do so they feel safer when they walk into that door. But the second thing that happened is the principal said, something's going on here, Josh. You're just changing the school culture. It's friendlier here. It's really friendlier. Other kids began to tell him they really missed him if there was the 1 or 2 days he was absent. Other kids also began to open other doors. The whole school culture changed. And that's how we change the culture and create a Cheers kind of a place. This is exactly what every kid is looking for. The most amazing thing happened to Josh, and that was right as he graduated. They all said, come on down to the assembly. We're going to give you something. That moment, They gave him a door. They all signed it and said, take it away, Josh, because you have taught us something powerful. Empathy can be cultivated. Empathy is lying dormant. Empathy is at the base of a thriving culture. What are you going to do from the welcome mat to greeting the kids to whatever it is? That's what our kids are craving. You can also have other kids become the door monitors along the way, but kids need to practice those social skills. If you're worried about some of your children, and we should be, because we're seeing a rise in stress, we're seeing a rise in anxiety and suicidology, I would suggest that you look for the Hope Squad. It's actually created by a principal who had in Idaho, one of his own students at a high school who committed suicide. He was so distraught from it. He realized that really one of the best ways to stop suicidal behavior patterns is mobilize peers at a high school. And so you're seeing kids across the country and across the world, Hope Squad, just go to hopesquad.com, or peer counselors. Maybe this is the time, get support groups of kids. These are right before school is opening in outside Southern California, and they're doing trust walks. They're all masks up, but they're helping kids feel secure when they come back into school. They're using the kids whose other children at the school said, if I had a problem, here's the kid I would go to. Those are the kids you need. Mobilize those kids, principal. Here's another thing. One of the things that we realize that we need to keep in mind is that many children are scared to death because they don't have anybody to play with, or they're worried about who am I going to sit next to. Simple ideas that you may want to consider, and here's two. Ask your kids just a simple little on a 3x5 card, all of your students, where do you sit in the cafeteria? And again, you're going to be social distancing, but who's going to sit next to you? Collect the cards. If the kid doesn't have anybody sitting next to you, that's the kid you put on your Google Doc, because that's the kid who's really worried. Here you're going to add what other teachers are doing. It's going to be recess in a minute. I know you're all going to be social distancing and you're going to be sitting in hoops, but who you're going to sit somewhere around so you can talk to, write it down at the bottom of your test. At the result, what happens is you'll discover who's alienated, who's isolated. What we discovered is that many of our children have spent a year in isolation, and now they desperately need connection. You got to figure out who those kids are and don't overlook those children. Other ideas, feeling checkups. You see, emotional literacy is the gateway to empathy. You can't empathize with another person unless you can go, she looks happy, or he looks sad, or wow, he sounds frustrated. There's a lot of ways you can do feeling checkups. In my own classroom, way back when with my special needs kids, I realized they were having a tough time verbalizing feelings. And so I just made one thing on the spot, a real simple rudimentary cardboard thermometer, and put it up with clothespins. I put my name on a clothespin and every student's name on a clothespin, and just said, hey, as soon as you walk in, let us know how you're feeling today. You don't need to say anything, just let us know. I always would put my feelings, why not, on there so that they knew how I was doing. It took them a while to feel safe to do it. But you'll discover it's a gold mine for you, because some of the kids you're dealing with are going to be at the red zone when they walk in. Some of the kids are going to be at the yellow zone, and it's amazing how they're going to creep up. You can also do the zone I'm feeling in over there, or are you a thumbs up or a thumbs down right now? Or you can do another one, and that is on a scale of 1 to 7, how you doing today? 1 is you could be asleep, you're so relaxed. 7 is, boy, you are so stressed that you got to let us know. Doctors ask that for kids right when they walk in. How bad is the pain? Let's do the same for our kids. Parents, you can do the same thing at home. It's silent. You don't have to do anything but just go like this. Back to the thermometer in my own classroom. I walked in a little late one day and saw the kids around Ethan. I went, what's going on? And they all said, pointing to the thermometer, Ethan's having a really bad day, Mrs. Borba. We got to do something for him. I realized that the feeling thermometer was helping the kids empathize with one another. That was my takeaway. There's lots of ideas you can do, lots of ideas. One other thing that I want to suggest to make a safe zone is give each of your kids a map of the school. Every student in the entire school, and you can do it at home as well. Cover the map if you're doing it in a classroom. But you're going to discover that many of your kids actually for the last year were better off at home because they weren't bullied. Now they're coming back into school and they're scared because the whole thing they said is going to be repeated. So what do you want to do? Bullying doesn't happen everywhere. bullying happens in certain areas called hot spots. So what you do is you ask the kid, would you circle the areas that you feel safest, where you feel most relaxed? Just circle them. Don't put your name on the map, by the way. Kids are always more honest if they don't put their name on the map. And then you do is you just grade in the areas where you feel least safe. If you looked at this, look at it carefully. I would collect 1,200 of these, and I have done this with school after school after school around the world. I would say, watch out for these spots. These are your hot spots. These are the hallways. What they did at this school, they bought stools at Walmart, stools. And then what they did, brilliant, is during hall passing period, because they knew those were the hotspot zones to help kids, high school, feel safer, they rotated staff members. And every day at every different hall passing period, there was a different teacher sitting on a stool watching the kids. They felt safe. The most amazing thing is there was a middle school in North Penn, Pennsylvania. The middle school teacher, principal, bought a full cardboard cutout of herself, put it in the middle of the hallway and said, I'm watching you. You never know when I'm going to show up. The kids loved it because they knew that she cared. A place where everybody knows your name and everybody's glad you came. That's number 2. Let's look at number 3. Are you seeing that it isn't one trait that helps a kid become a thriver, but several of them? But there's also a multiplier effect that was my aha moment. What I did is discover that too often we rely on an SEL program and we do a great job of maybe teaching self-control, but we forget that if you put empathy plus self-control together, it amplifies them. So if you put confidence plus empathy plus self-control together, they're like superpowers for a kid. It isn't one trait. By the way, relax. It's a rare kid that has 7. It's a rare adult that has 7. But the more they have with the skills that help them thrive, these are going to be ongoing lessons. It's never a one lesson. The best lessons on self-control are a minute a day and keep on going, the same thing. But it's attentive focus, it's self-management, and it's healthy decision-making. Self-control, it's what's tanking with our kids right now. And if we don't get a handle on it, our kids are going to really struggle. In fact, we're looking at a rise in depression that's unprecedented. This year versus last year, last month versus last year prior to the pandemic, we were tracking kids who were 5 to 11 going to ER visits for anxiety. And just in the last month, it increased 25%. How about for 12 to 17-year-olds, your students going to ER? By the way, most parents are afraid to take their kids to ER visits. So during the pandemic, it has increased 31%. We're looking at a rise in suicidology that's unprecedented, depression that's unprecedented. And what Emmy Werner and most of the resilient work would say, it's because many of our kids are lacking coping skills. So put your interventions together. What are they? What are really deeper interventions that you need, not for all the kids, but for the kids you know that are really going to be struggling? Are you creating some safe spots, some safe zones for kids, maybe that are housed by those maybe retired teachers that'll come in and say, I volunteer, I have an X credential, but I can sit there for kids who need to come. Counselor corners or safe zone corners. Let me show you what I've seen you all do. The key is prepare for it now. There's the hotspot zones. There's the stools from the teachers. There's the snap zones that are just saying, and I would strongly suggest you have snap boxes. Those are just boxes with a lock and key on them that you placed around your school site in many places. Those are for kids to be able to say, I saw bullying happen in a certain area, or I'm really worried about Johnny because she's saying that she isn't feeling good about herself or she's cutting herself. What we discover is that our best metal detectors are actually kids. They have a pulse on their friends. What you then do, please, principal, is during hall passing time, walk to those boxes and collect them. Why during hall passing time? Because many schools have these and kids say, I'm not filling those out anymore because nobody's reading them. If kids see you taking them out and reading them, they're going to feel a lot safer as a result. Monitor your hotspots. Other ideas. Let's keep going. Some of you already have mood meters, mood Zoom rooms. Now, these are high school. high school level. So it isn't just the little kids, it's the bigger kids. I mention these because sometimes when you say, okay, now we're going to do a resilience program, resilience thriving programs are also based on taking the principles and practices you already have and saying which one of them already support those 7 traits that matter most. If you already have a mood room, or what zone am I in, excuse me, then put those back up because kids feel safer and more comfortable. These are things that schools across the country, around the world, are also doing. They're creating spots where kids can feel calmer, and they call them calm down spots. One school actually set up a teepee. They asked the kids, how are you feeling? Really edgy, said the kids. What would you need? A room that's quieter, that the lights aren't on, that has soothing music, maybe a place I can go to. And that's what they created, was a calm down spot. There is a retired teacher at this spot. Sometimes there isn't anybody coming in, and sometimes there's a lot of people coming in. Another class has actually calm down corners in the room, which are just books or music for iPads. When you feel a little bit edgy, there you go. The other thing is how you get parents involved. I love this. They're calm down kits. What you do is you tell parents on your online, just on the front of your website, here's some things you can do at home. Your children can do at home. You already have these things. Put them in a basket or a shoebox. But each day, maybe just share one more way to help your children learn to calm down until they figure out which things helps them. The directions are now on your online, just at the beginning of your school website or your class website. Or maybe have each kid make it in school and bring one home. What we're looking at is an upsurge in parental stress that's unprecedented. And parental stress is spilling over to your student stress. Your stress, teacher, is spilling over to your student stress. We got to take care of ourselves so we can take care of our students. Other ideas. How about kids who are really challenging in behavior? Let me just share this child with you. Her name is Jennifer. Jennifer has gone through extreme trauma. You've got a few Jennifers, I know you do, in your school. And you go, what do I do? You have to empathize with what does she need. And this teacher was absolutely brilliant, working with the counselor. She realized, first of all, this kid was so edgy that in place, ready for her when she came back, they put bungee cords on the bottom of her desk because it helped her feet, who were always moving, stay a little bit calmer. They realized that she was a drawer, and so they always had access inside her desk, just a notebook that you can draw or write out your anger. This kid, and I would strongly suggest you do this, not for every child, but maybe the kids who are clearly a little more edgy, put in place what to do for challenging behaviors. What this teacher did was put stacking cups. Red is stop, I'm really at my breaking point. Yellow is I'm getting there, and green is I'm fine. The kid would actually stack the cups by putting green at the top if she was doing okay, or I'm yellow at the top. Many teachers do a similar thing, not with stacking cups, but maybe it's a one pencil. And it's not for every child, but it's for the children who are really more challenging. And it's just a simple little signal. If you're really on edge and you're really having a tough time, put the pencil at the top of your desk. Nobody needs to know but you and me. If I see that, it's your signal to me that means you need to go to the mood room, or you need to get a pass to go to the counselor. She also had a feeling thermometer. What I'm saying to you is a lot of times our kids are facing some real challenging types of behavior. And I want you to encourage your teachers, if you're an educational leader, to have plans in just in case. Let me give you a simple one. Two teachers, as I'm giving this, said, oh, we got a plan in place. I said, what is it? She says, we use a white stapler. I was a little concerned about, what do you do with the white stapler? Oh, each of us has a white stapler. And what we have vowed to do is help each other. When you see a child come in with a white stapler, it really doesn't mean I need more staples. It really means, can you just please take the child for just a few minutes? Because I need to regroup myself. He's really challenging right now. And what happens is, over and over again, the other teacher, because she's calm and she hasn't been dealing with this child, is able to calm the child for just a few minutes, then the child can go back. have something in place for challenging behaviors, but also let's start teaching kids protective buffers. When we look at the most highly correlated protective buffers that help thrivers, each chapter in the book Thrivers has dozens and dozens of protective buffers, but the simplest ones are problem solving, coping strategies, and just safe spots that kids can use. Here's what we do know, so let's look at them. Okay, what's the best program in the country, around the world? I'd say it's Oakland, California, and it's Visitation High School, and it's started by one counselor, bless her soul. What this counselor did was realize these kids were in a tough spot. This is prior to the pandemic, but they're still doing it. Prior to the pandemic, they're in a tough spot where every day these kids are walking to school, actually texting to each other which streets to avoid so you won't be injured. That's that level of a violent zone. By the time they walk into school, do you think the kid is going to be relaxed and be able to tune into your dynamic lessons? No. So what did the teacher do was walk in and convince the principal, let's teach kids some different kinds of skills like mindful breathing, slow, deep breathing. I say this to you because working on Army bases, the best thing I've ever learned in my life was from Navy SEALs. All the strategies are in Thrivers that I learned from all over the world that are science-based. The simplest one is 1-2 breathing. Navy SEAL said we are retrained before we go into some really tough times. And one of the things we do is immediately we identify our stress signs. We start to know when we start to feel on edge. Then we immediately tell ourselves, chill out or calm down, and we start breathing. 1-2 breaths, exactly what these kids are doing. Like you're riding up an elevator, hold it, and slowly let it out. 1-2, slowly let it out. Now, what they did is they taught the kids the slow, deep breathing, but they did a couple of other gold mines. The first thing is during the counselor's lesson, or maybe teacher, you've been trained in it, or who's been trained in it, bring one person in who knows this stuff well, and then video it, put it on a flash drive. Keep it on your PowerPoint. So every day you show the same video. Sometimes what we do is we break down how to do it right. And so we don't get the right results. Show the same thing. But here's what the school also did in another one. They sent the video home for each child to go home and teach the parent. That's my homework assignment tonight, Mom. I got to teach you. The other thing they did, and I swear every kid that I interviewed over 100 children coast to coast who are all recommended by the counselor, of what's your perception of what do you need in order to thrive when I was writing Thrivers. And more kids said, we need stress management tools, but you don't learn them on worksheets. We got to practice them over and over and over again. It's not like a health class. I know we got it in health, but you don't learn it in freshman year and keep doing it in your senior year. So what they're doing here is shaving off 1 minute after each class. So there's 5 minutes when you walk into the first period class and everybody does slow, deep breathing. It's becoming so powerful that now what they've done is do 5 minutes at the beginning and 5 minutes at the end. And guess what? The test scores went over the top. They didn't do anything differently other than slow, deep breathing. Suspensions went down, attendance went up, behavior problems went down. You can do the same thing with the little guys. This is Jennifer Bell's class, Redondo Beach. What she does is she talks to the kids about the power of breathing. I'm watching the kids do slow, deep breathing every day for 3 minutes a day. Every kid in that class could tell me what their stress signs are. This is prior to the pandemic, but boy, do they need it now. And then I'm watching the kids practice. By 3 minutes, the entire class was asleep. I'm going, man, I got to practice this. But here's what Jennifer Bell did. She didn't send the flash drive home. Instead, she had the kids make just breathe hats where they actually took photographs of themselves doing the breathing and then practice with the parent. I think what we need to do is be a little craftier on how we get whatever we're doing in school into the homes of the parent so it can be transferred and make a difference. Here's, folks, what I want to share with you. I'm giving you some practices, lots of them. There's dozens more that I know you're doing. But when you talk about thriving, one of the things that you need to do right this minute before those school doors open, or if your school doors are already open, is recognize that your kids are a little bit different right now. They've endured an extremely tough year. Many of them are stressed to the max. We're looking at perfectionism rising, where kids are feeling not enough. We're looking at suicidal behaviors. So the first thing is maybe take a moment and align. What are you already doing? Don't reinvent the wheel. What are you already doing that aligns with what we're talking about? Your procedures, your practices, your principles, your policies, and most importantly, the cheers kind of a place. How can you align what you're doing to be more supportive to help your kids thrive? Let's keep going, because integrity is another piece of the pie. The fascinating thing is that thrivers have a real strong moral code and they stick to it. When you're saying, how do I possibly do this in the classroom? There's some simple ideas you can do. And that's the piece that we seem to be missing. The moment the kid walks across your threshold, you got a moment to be able to model integrity, expect integrity, and give kids opportunities to do integrity. That's how you instill integrity. What we've discovered is that other classrooms, other schools, even if the parents aren't doing this at home, can make a difference so the child learns a different set of moral standards. He may not use them at home, but he uses them the moment they walk into your school building. Some ideas. Here's the simplest idea. Now, 2 ones. Easy? Yeah. Mrs. Mike does rules. Here's your rules. And they're actually Thriver's rules, but she's got posters and she doesn't put them all up at once. She puts them up maybe once a month. Here's another rule in the classroom. And this is kind of like the Thriver rule for optimism. Here's another teacher. He's the chemistry teacher. What he does is put up a quote a day. And while he's taking roll, and he also does this, by the way, on Zoom by holding up just a simple little whiteboard and puts up a different quote. He says, the first thing we're going to do each day is just think about the quote. My thing is to keep emphasizing self-respect. But let me tell you what a PE teacher does, dealing with 150 girls a day. So have a moment of silence for her. She said, I had my aha moment. I don't know what it is with girls being so mean. But one day I said, I had my, oh, that's enough. I walked across the street to Walmart, bought myself a whiteboard, had a new plan, walked back and asked my principal if I could tack the whiteboard on my door, and vowed to do one thing that would take me 2 minutes every single day before school. Every day right before school, I was going to write a quote about compassion. I happen to have a book, inspirational quotes, which, by the way, is the best thing that every educator in the world needs. A really good book on inspirational quotes. Every day I was going to write a quote. I said, what did you say to the kids? She said, I didn't say anything to the kids. It was for me to remind me to be nice to the girls because I was having a tough time. And so I kept writing and writing and writing and writing until pretty soon one day I had car trouble. It was the first day the entire year that I didn't get enough time to be able to write the quote on the board. And it was the first day every single kid walked in and said, where's the quote? And I said to the girls, I've been writing it every day. You don't say anything about it. And every kid said, well, it doesn't mean we don't read it. I love that quote. It doesn't mean we don't read it. So often we want things to have feedback from our kids. Is it working? Is it not? Mrs. Fredrickson, we never gave her feedback. That H&H stuff really works, Mrs. Fredrickson. But she kept doing it because it was the one thing that she wanted to instill the kids. She was teaching empathy. She was also teaching self-control, confidence, and put all three together. She did it every day with the same ritual. But she said, this teacher, the PE teacher, she said, you know what? Every kid one by one began to tell me the power of the quote, how it was helping them get through the day. Many of them said, we talk about it after school, that quote. A lot of us do, And then she said, one kid, the child who was the struggler, the child who she didn't feel like she could get to, waited for all the rest of the girls to leave, picked up her ratty old backpack, unzipped it, and showed every quote had been neatly copied. Find simple rituals to build integrity. If you really want to teach integrity, target what you stand for. What's the single most important thing you want kids to attain from your school other than a GPA? How about a heart? The Thriver traits impact peak performance. We know, I know, that's why I chose them. But they also impact your children's integrity. That's key. Be the example of it. There's a fabulous book called The Altruistic Personality that I love. Samuel Alliner interviewed hundreds of rescuers after World War II. Why did certain rescuers risk their lives to help Jews during the Holocaust? You don't know who those rescuers are, because rescuers don't look for Citizen of the Month awards or trophies. They do it because they know it's the right thing to do. Samuel Oliner was actually rescued as a kid at age 12 by a perfect stranger named Belinda. Why did she rescue her life? Well, my parents and all my siblings went off to a death camp and were murdered in genocide. When he began to interview all of them, they said three things. All of them said, my parents expected it. They expected me to be kind. My parents were the model of kindness. I saw them every day be kind or people of integrity. Third thing is they gave us opportunities to do good. And so I saw myself as doing good. Those are the same things we do in our classrooms, teacher. We do those over and over again. Sometimes we just don't realize the power we have. Accentuated in the books you read. By the way, keep reading books. Expose kids to books. Books build integrity, but they also build empathy. If they're literary fiction, you know why Wonder is the most popular book across the US? Why I ask middle school kids, what's the one book that should always be read to kids? And they always say The Outsiders. I said, that's 50 years old. They said, yeah, but it helps you realize what it feels like to be excluded. Why do high school kids right now so into The Hate U Give? So they understand racism. You can step into the shoes of a character. By the way, counselors, get some bibliotherapy right now, books that help kids heal. Books about grief, books about dying, books about kids who have been exposed to adversity who bounce back. Because for some children who are really having a tough time, books can be the way to heal. That's how you accentuate it. You weave it in, catch them in the act. What we now know is if you catch the kids saying, thank you for being kind, like Mrs. Fredrickson did every day at the door, thank you for being kind, because it's more likely to build it up so your kids see yourself as a kind person. Nancy Eisenberg's work at the University of Arizona, you're more likely to act in the way you see yourself. We're so quick to ask our kids when they come home, what you get? We're not so good about asking, what kind thing did you do? And then keep highlighting why it matters. What you'll do, folks, is help your children develop integrity, and that actually helps them thrive. Look at the multiplier effect one more time. Notice that it isn't one trait. It's when you pair any other trait together, like self-confidence plus curiosity, it amplifies, it multiplies the outcome. It's a rare kid that has all seven, but find what really ignite the child. Back to self-confidence, because these aren't so easy as strengths. I remember Michael Scully, who was a GRASP, which is the gang prevention officer from Cathedral City. He said, I was working with gang members. I was trying desperately to get them out. How do you raise a kid to be a thriver who's been exposed to that kind of mentality for so long? He said, one kid we finally got, we put him in, we were figuring out how the heck are we going to rehabilitate this kid? And I kept telling my officers, you have got to figure out what this kid's strength is. You've got to figure out this strength, that's where we're going to go. The rest of my team, they couldn't find anything. I said, go back to the kid's house and figure it out. The following day, I heard this bump, 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 bump as they came up to my office upstairs. We found it. We found it. What is it? They brought in the kid's headboard. It was the most extraordinarily artistically drawn headboard you could possibly imagine. That's it. He's artistic. I'm not saying you do that with 1,200 kids, but who are the kids who are really struggling right now? That could be your piece, because that's going to multiply the others. Now comes curiosity. You're going to see these are piecing together. Curiosity would be the next piece. So if you're moving along the way, this is number 5. What we do know about curiosity is that thrivers are out of the box thinkers. Please don't think that I'm saying this kid has to be an Einstein, but they are problem solvers. And what we do know is what rescues problem solving abilities, and we're good at this in this country, is always solving the problem for them. If a parent always says, do this, if a teacher says, try this, you actually rob the kid of helping them learn to problem solve. Rescuers, these kids, when they look at it in terms of how they get through, and I'm saying a rescued kid stops at the adversity. They face it and they go, I can't do it. A thriver says, I got this. I'll find a different way around it. And that's what we need to do. We do know that our children have natural curiosity when they're young, but there is a nosedive in curiosity, creativity, starting around the age of 5. Ivy League professors, by the way, are saying there's a different breed of kids coming in. They're more afraid to raise their hand and get the wrong answer because they're more afraid that they're going to get dinged from their grade. And so we're not creating deeper thinkers. And that is not going to help our kids thrive. When we look at what's the best place in the world, what I did when I was writing Thrivers was deliberately go around the world to find the best of the best. And this was the MIT Multimedia Lab. The best and the best? Yeah. This is where Surrey is invented. Artificial intelligence invented. These are the most creative geniuses we have. When I walked in, I went, oh my gosh, this is absolutely mind-boggling. How do they create creativity? How do they help all these people thrive to the level where they're changing the world? They come up with 4 rules. 4 rules. First is interdisciplinary. I'm watching neuroscientists plus mathematicians plus artists all in the same room trying to work together to solve a problem. Too often we pigeonhole kids. The more we get collaboration every once in a while, that's going to build empathy, but it's also going to help our kids, when we know for jigsaw learning, expose kids to differences because you're more likely to empathize with those like you. How do you get kids to open up and empathize with them? That's what we want, is an us world, not a them world. Finding your passion. These kids, now adults, are coming in finding the passion that they want to work on. And there's their confidence level. By the way, the only criteria in the MIT Multimedia Lab is that the invention you create must somehow better humanity. Projects, they're live things, and play. The fascinating thing is lifelong kindergarten is one of the most popular parts, modules of where they're doing all of these inventions. I walk in and they're adults sitting on the floor playing with Legos. I laughed, they laughed, and they said, yeah, but it actually helps us relax. And now we're really working harder as a result of it. By the way, failure is an option at this place because that's how you invent something. Okay, you blew it. So what are you going to do next time? And what they teach above all else is how to solve problems. They brainstorm. Don't parent from this moment on, solve a problem for a kid. In fact, for little guys, teach them brainstorming. Thumbkin, what's the problem? 1, 2, 3, what are 3 things you could have done differently? Ringman is, what's the one thing you're going to try and do? Maybe it's taking a stand. Stop, calm down. Tell yourself what's bugging you. Write it down or say to somebody else what's bugging you. Brainstorm. What are the alternatives? Narrow the choices. Get rid of anything that's not safe, wise, or responsible. Decide on one and do it. This is STAND. It's great for conflict resolution. You can't teach that tomorrow, but you teach what many schools are doing is 1 skill a month. 1 skill a month. So there's self-control. Skill number 1. Say what's wrong by able to verbalize it. Brainstorm. There comes curiosity. Narrow the choices. Comes integrity. Decide on the right one and do it. Moving ahead. Maybe problem solving wheels, or what can I do and say something differently. Just realize that thrivers think outside the box. They're not squelched by, I don't know what to do. And now comes perseverance. This is interesting. There's dozens of ways to help our kids persevere, but there's one that I think we need to hang into right now. There are countries around the world that are doing some extraordinary research that we need to be aware of. China has just come up with which kids are most likely to thrive in China after a pandemic. And what they've discovered is that it's kids with a growth mindset. Children prior to the pandemic who realized that mindsets aren't fixed. It's all a matter of IQ. I can't do anything differently about it. As a result, what happens is the kid is more likely to endure. So let's look at perseverance because it's fascinating of how it helps kids thrive. The mindset, that's Carol Dweck. And the single most important thing is from this moment on, we need to put a little bit more into focusing on the kid's effort. You hung in there. You didn't give up. It's going to get better. I know it's hard right now. Okay, you're really overwhelmed with the whole thing. So let's look at the whole project. Don't do the whole project right now. Fold it and just do the first row. Kids say they're overwhelmed with everything. So help them focus by making it smaller. I don't know how to do it. I keep making the same mistake. I had a piano teacher named Mr. White who drove me crazy. I hated music. I hated piano because he had one rule. You're playing Mozart, you make one mistake and it could be right before you're almost done with the entire concert. You got to start all over again. You got to be fail-proof, go all the way through. Well, all I did was stress myself out because I was overwhelmed with the mistake. Next teacher was Mrs. Thompson. Now I love music again because Mrs. Thompson had a different attitude. Her attitude is number one is, Michele, let's just keep working on that one little stumbler. Let's focus on your effort. The more you practice that one little stumbler, the better you'll get. She wasn't focusing on how smart I was or what grade I got. She was focusing on keep working on it. And she identified my stumbler. Teacher, help the kid identify the stumbler, the one thing that's getting in the way, and work on that one little stumbler and now play the whole thing. Oh my gosh, I was so relaxed as a result of it. There's dozens of things you can do until finally what you're going to be able to do is help your child develop an optimistic mindset. Hope. The most amazing thing is this one is teachable. The most amazing thing also is that college Ivy League professors across the US are discovering that so many, prior to the pandemic, incoming college freshmen are lacking the same 7 skills I've been talking about. They're now teaching a week-long resilience building to teach the exact same traits. Why are we waiting? These traits help our children now as well as later. They help our kids thrive a pandemic, but they also help our kids handle no matter what else is going to come their way, and who knows. Optimism is teachable. Some things that you may want to add to your plate, because if we don't stop the pessimism, and that's what's happening to us, our children are becoming pessimistic thinkers. Every kid's going to have a bad day and every kid's going to have a negative thought. And I'm saying, for heaven's sakes, keep a reality check on this. But the goal that you want to do is help the child be able to realize, I got this, and be able to stop the pessimism. Ideas number 1, based on science and proven. Teachers, come up with a class mantra. And it may be all day long or all month long or all year long. You got a brainstorm poster board that just says, let's create some mantras that we want to use for this class. Like, we got this, or we're stronger together. And whatever is our mantra, we're going to vote for the best mantra. And then what you do is that you keep saying it. Navy SEALs do this. They use a mantra. It keeps our pessimism down so that we're more likely to thrive and go through. What some teachers are doing is having each kid come up with a mantra so that by the end of the school year, here's my mantra I'm going to use the rest of my life. Believe me, that will help your kid forever. This is what they can now say inside their head to help stop the pessimism. Keep going, because images, teachers, are powerful. I mention this because we do know the kinds of images that all of our kids around the world have been seeing are absolutely dismal. They turn on a newscast wherever they are and they're seeing a daily death count of how many deaths are in that particular country or around the world. They're seeing horrific horror of murders live, of shootings live. That's what's happened in the United States. But what do? Here's the gold mine. Because we do know that optimism can inspire your children, hope, if they see the right images. And here's what happened in the US. 2 siblings. Now, their confidence level and their strength, they know, is cello. They love cello. They have empathy. Yeah, they do. They're empathizing for the lady down the street who's all by herself, who's in her 80s, mom, and she doesn't have any friends. In a year, she's been by herself. What are we going to do? Well, mom, let's do a cello concert. Can we bring our cellos, go on the porch? We're social distance. We'll social distance. We won't touch her, but we'll just play the cellos. What happens was amazing because they played the cellos. Oh, the smiles on the kids' faces because they did something wonderful. They saw the smile on their friend's face. The best way to reduce stress is by giving. The second thing that happened is mom videoed it. She videoed it. And as a result, she put it on Facebook. Now it went live. And that's why you're seeing concerts around the world of children whose strength happens to be music. You're seeing ukulele concerts in Australia. You're seeing tuba concerts down in New York. Inspire kids by seeing the good. One of the coolest things I've ever seen, was actually in a Long Island high school prior to the pandemic. The kids even then said, all we're seeing is the bad stuff in the world. They convinced their superintendent, I kid you not, to put a huge plasma screen right outside the front door when you walk into the quad at the high school. And on the screen, they said, can you just put video clips of good stuff? I walked into the high school and there's the kids all looking up. And all the kids are starting to smile because they're seeing good stuff. You can do the same thing over the intercom. You can do the same thing every day with, here's another good thing that happened in the world. They're always in the back page of the newspaper about this big, cut them out. Are you beginning to see that thrivers are made up of 7 strengths? Each one of those strengths, you're going to get a handout that shows you they also have skills that are teachable. The book Thrivers is each chapter one of those particular strengths. It's in audio form from Amazon, it's in digital form, it's also in hardback. It'll show you a school that's doing something brilliantly simple and right in order to take it up a notch. But it'll also have books you can read for each chapter. It'll have dozens of other what kids are saying about these thriving skills. You can also look at the skills as practices and protective things. So many of the things like multiple intelligence, capstone projects, restorative justice, quiet time, things you're already doing, teacher, fit into it. Start looking at what already you do that makes a difference on your kids' lives. Know that this thing about resilience, many of the things we're talking about are myths. It's not a program, it's a process. Kids aren't born with resilience. We make them and help them become resilient. If there's not a fixed window, oh my gosh, she's already 16, I can't do anything about it. Hey, there's still hope for us as well. It's not one trait, it's multiple traits. And if we do this right, actually what we'll do is make major differences on our children's lives. I want to end this with an experience I had that changed my life so that you know this can happen anywhere. Most of us are not enduring extreme adversity or trauma, but a refugee camp in Beirut outside Lebanon is. I've traveled to all over the world. I've worked in many places that have had horrific ordeals. I've worked with war-torn areas, just came out from Karabakh, Rwanda after genocide, Lebanon. I'm walking with UN officials through this refugee camp. And the first thing I'm looking for is what we talked about at the very beginning. Is there any refuge place? Is there any haven for a place? Is there a cheers kind of a place? Is there anything here that would help a kid be able to just de-stress? And as you're looking at bullet holes and as you're looking at electric wires hanging down and I'm being yelled at, don't touch it, you'll get electrocuted. I think, oh my God, how do kids get through this? Until this incredible UN professor says, turn, Dr. Borba, and walk up those stairs. You'll need a flashlight to get up there, but walk up the stairs. And so I do, figuring, oh my God, there's rabid dogs on one side, there's drug dealers on another. But I get up the stairs and all of a sudden I see a doorway. It's stark on one side, but they said, walk through the doorway. I walked through the doorway and literally, I can't get through this. It was unbelievable because it was a haven. It was one man, like a Mrs. Fredrickson, like a you, who realized kids need a cheers kind of a place. One man who also decided that let's figure out what will help kids identify their strengths. What he did was to create a chess club. Plastic chess sets, he couldn't afford more. Just simple little tables that he said took him quite a while to find. It was a place where he wanted kids to develop ownership. And each kid, when they walked in, I saw stress on them on one side. When they walked across the threshold, I saw them breathe. A translator would help me because I began to ask the kids, what's so special about this place? And every kid began to say, yeah, I can breathe here. This is where I feel calm. This is where I can go and be me. Many kids began to say also, this is where I figured out I'm good in math. This is where I didn't realize I'm so good in chess. This is the place that helps me be me. One man. That's what we need to do, folks. What I've kind of gone through here is 7 traits that seem to matter most. 7 traits that are based on science and 7 traits that every kid in the world needs now, as well as the rest of their lives. They're also set up in heart, mind, and will, because I think that's the other thing that our kids are needing. We've kind of made it into one peak. We put all our emphasis on cognitive hype, when now we realize we got to get back to the whole kid. And we got to get back to what science says, make a difference. Above all else, create a cheers kind of place for your kids, because that's what they're craving. Thanks for being you. Take care of yourself. If you've got questions, I'm here for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Michele. As usual, you amaze me, and you're just the the specific details and scenarios and examples that you give are so powerful, and I think very impactful for all of our attendees. We don't have a ton of time left, but we do have a few minutes. So I'm going to ask you one or two questions, and then we'll wrap up. So one we got was, any tips for staff buy-in for this type of practice?
Yeah.
We've tried
Yeah.
something similar and they start strong, but then after a few weeks when it's hard, they bail.
Okay, number one is expect that. It's called the implementation dip. Michael Fullen developed it. He said, we always start strong, but the first thing you should be aware of, educator, is the implementation dip, meaning that if you're not prepared for it, the momentum will go down. How do you keep it going? Simple. Your teachers are burned out as well as the kids. So first, it could be I'm seeing better approach is 5-minute staff sessions every single time you're together. Maybe it's an ongoing email chain. There's a book discussion guide you're going to get for Thrivers of maybe read like 1 page a day or keep going. I'm doing, by the way, for the state of California, we're doing an 8-week session free for any parent to come on in, and we're helping the parents so that the teachers say, I can't do this all myself. California said, well, let's get on board together. Nuggets. I've seen in your faculty room also some articles about that it works, that it's simple. If you give teachers too much and you do one staff development training, we know it's doomed. We know that they'll start strong but go down. Be prepared for it, keep it going, and also just help them. I think the best thing is get some focus groups of kids, video them saying this makes a difference, because when teachers hear students say, thank you for that 1-2 breathing, it's really helping me, they'll do it the rest of their lives.
Wow, that's good. And I think for very, very good advice for parents too. I know sometimes as a parent, we try some type of behavior modification system or reward system, and after a while we just kind of give up because it's hard. So really good advice. And you talked a little bit about college freshmen and kind of what colleges are seeing now. We got a question from Oregon State University. Someone from Oregon State asked, what is some practical advice for those of us not teachers, but offering pre-college programs? We often don't know the students as well as their teachers. So what do they do?
I got this. And why I got this, and I'm so excited, because Hawaii asked me to do a freshman orientation for all college freshmen who were already there. They'd been there for 6 months. The first thing I did was survey all the kids saying, what do you need now that you're here? What do you stumbled by? Now, the number one concern they had was financial. So figuring out, letting them know, here's where you can go for financial aid would be critical. But the second thing that kept coming up was time management tools. We weren't taught these, or I know teachers, you taught them, but we don't know them nearly enough. What I discovered along the way when I was doing the webinar is that there's a few fabulous books online that says college freshmen, in fact, look for the bestsellers on Amazon. You just need 1 or 2 of them. And here's the most important things that every college freshman needs in order to survive. And then what you do is the same thing like the teachers. You crunch the things of, here's the best tip in order to do time management. Here's the best tip in order to do note taking. Here's the best tip so you don't cram. Kids say they love the tips because they were so simple. They were science-based. The other thing that they said was the kids said they need coping strategies. Oregon State, get on board with other colleges, because Tufts is now doing this. UP is now doing this. Stanford's doing it. They're seeing that the number one time our kids are most likely to drop out of school is end of freshman year, first semester of college, because they get there and they don't have the resilient strategies. So let's teach them before they get there. Hope that helped, but I can also network with you later on with a contact with my own website.
Awesome. Okay, and one more I think we have time for. The sad part here in my 12 villages is that 100% of the kids have seen domestic violence or have been involved in physical, sexual, or verbal abuse. Parents are not involved in their lives or substance abusers. They've been adopted to grandparents or relatives. And kids age 12 are the adults watching over their younger siblings and having babies as early as 14. Where do you start? How do you break the cycle?
You break this. Please, first of all, my heart is going to you, because I have been with you. I know exactly what you're talking about. And if you're not careful, you get overwhelmed. And what you do is you need to do what the research says. Don't look at all the masses. Look for one. Look for one. Actually, that's what Mother Teresa says. The only way to keep her empathy up was, if I looked at all the starving kids, I'd never make it. Create a smaller, smaller, smaller village. Your first step is to create the model of what will work. And what kids say, it's just one person. Now, in the Philippines, similar kids in an outreach, what they discovered is that it was one coach, and he decided to do soccer. He decided to teach all the skills of the 7 trades during soccer. He found other people, maybe 12-year-olds, who also have the heart piece. You can't do them all, but if you slowly start building the haven, you can make a difference. Honestly, I've seen it, and it is mind-boggling. It's not anything that cost a dime. It's like what they did at the refugee camp.
Yeah.
One place the kid can go to feel safe. One place, says Emmy Warner, is enough to make a difference on that child's life the rest of their lives. One place, one person. Think of one place, one person.
That's great. Okay, so as we end today, first of all, Dr. Borba, thank you so much. As usual, your expertise is just so amazing, and we appreciate your time and all the research and work that you do with kids to help us all better protect kids and help raise more resilient kids, more empathetic kids. You never cease to amaze us. So we also want to thank everyone who attended today. We had registrants from 9 other countries and all across America. So hopefully a lot of you gained some good ideas today. Just to wrap up, let you know you will be getting an email with a certificate of completion and a link to a web page where we will house the webinar recording and other resources Dr. Borba mentioned and that she has shared with us, an educator guide, a parent guide. And of course, hopefully everybody will check out MBF prevention education programs. You know, Dr. Borba gave us just so many great ideas and resources. And if you couple that with, you know, MBF's programs for protecting kids from abuse and all kinds of things they're dealing with today, you're really going to have a great setup for kids. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Michele Borba. You're amazing. And just thank you to 400, 500, 600 people who logged on today who really want to learn more about how to help kids and how to help create thrivers. MBF is just so pleased that we're able to have Dr. Borba as a supporter and as a friend, and that we're able to present her for you to learn more. And stay tuned. We will do more of these webinars throughout the year. So, you know, keep up with us on our website and our social media, and we will, as we can, we will provide you with many more opportunities to learn more about protecting kids and raising healthy, happy, safe kids. Thank you, Dr. Borba.
Thank you.
We will see you soon, I'm sure. And thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon or the rest of your day.